Good evening. We'd like to call the Durham City Council meeting to order at 7 p.m. February 1st, Monday, and certainly want to welcome all of you that are here with us this evening. If we could just take a moment for silent meditation, please. Thank you. Councilman Davis, who in turn will recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are honored to have the pledge led tonight by Matt Gross-Close, who is the Senior Executive Director for the Durham Area Scouting Program. So, Matt?
If you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Bell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cole McFadden, Councilmember Davis, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Moffitt, Councilmember Reese,
Here.
and Councilmember Shule.
Thank you. It is my distinct pleasure, and it's always an honor when I have an opportunity to present a proclamation recognizing individuals or organizations. But tonight is sort of a special night. And I'd like to ask if Damian Elliott Bynum, if he would join me, along with Carolyn Hinton. As most, if not all of you know, unfortunately, in the past month or so, we lost a very distinguished individual in this community. And I dare say she hasn't touched many people in this community. And in fact, she was sort of named the Mother Teresa of Durham. And I'm sure you know I'm speaking about the late Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum. Many of us had an opportunity to attend the homegoing ceremony for Dr. Bynum, and I guess some of us were at the 20th anniversary celebration just probably a month or two before she passed. But tonight, what we'd like to do is present a special proclamation. I won't read all of it, but the gist of it is that whereas Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum, a native of Durham, was born January 5th, 1957, to the late Joe and Estelle Elliott, and blessed with two children, Ebony and Damian. Damian's here, and one grandson, Ahmad. Whereas she was a trailblazing public health advocate who believed in comprehensively addressing the social determinants of health to effectively improve the lives of underserved and underrepresented individuals. Whereas Dr. Bynum had a long history of attracting students, volunteers, healthcare providers, and professionals from other diverse sectors to join in her mission to help people in need. Whereas she, along with her sister, the late Pat Amici, founded CARE, Inc., Case Management of AIDS and Addiction Through Resources and Education. It was founded in 1995 and was registered with North Carolina Secretary of State in March of 1996. Whereas CARE, Inc. primarily addresses 5 health disparities with the highest mortality rates in the Durham County area, which are cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and HIV/AIDS. Whereas Dr. Bynum completed her elementary and secondary education in Durham Public Schools, her post-secondary education in nursing, counseling, and theology, including degrees in nursing from Durham Technical Institute, Watts School of Nursing, and North Carolina Central University. She also received a Master's of Arts degree in counseling and a PhD in theology from Victory International College. And whereas Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum was a loving and caring person who believed that knowing what to do is not enough, people need to be supported and to be healthy. And now, therefore, I, William V. Bill Bell, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim January 19th, 2016 as Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum Day in Durham. And we recognize this day annually and hereby urge all citizens to take special note of this observance. We honor the memory of Dr. Sharon Elliott Bynum for her sense of civility, for being a great leader and truly a woman with great compassion in public health and providing a safety net that encompasses people's social, emotional, financial, and psychological situations. And witness my hand in Corporate Facility, City of Durham, North Carolina. This is the first day of February 2016, and I'm going to present this to Dr. Bynum's sister, Carolyn Hinton, and her son, and for any comments that you may have.
To the Honorable Mayor Bell and his adjacent board members, we thank you so much for this honor for my sister. It was a great loss to our family and to the community, but we appreciate having the opportunity to continue her legacy and to continue to help persons who are in need. So we thank you.
Ask Councilman Reese for comments, followed by the Mayor Pro Tem and other council members.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you know this or remember, but last year I ran for city council. Worked out pretty well. But I can't tell you how many people wanted to talk to me as I went around the city about the need in our community for more recreational programs for our youth. And in addition to that, people came and talked to me time and again to make sure that we, as members of the City Council, took it upon ourselves to make sure that the Holton Career and Resource Center lived up to its full potential as a place where the people of Durham, and especially our young people, would want to come and take advantage of the programs and facilities there. And that's why I'm so excited about something that started today. Durham Parks and Recreation has taken a huge couple of steps in that direction. As of today, the fitness center and the open gym and computer lab at the Holton Center will be available to all residents of the city of Durham completely free of charge. And beginning March 1st, 1 month from now, almost all of the programs and activities at the Holton Center will also be free to the people of this city. So I want to say congratulations and thank you to the Director of Parks and Rec, Rhonda Parker, for her and her hardworking staff who found a way to make this work for the people of the city. Also want to thank Deputy City Manager Bo Ferguson and of course our City Manager Tom Bonfield for seeing this through. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds for the Holton Center and for the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Recognize the Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm going to yield to Mr. Shule since he
I
chairs
recognize
the
Councilman
Finance
Shule.
Committee to talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit.
As many of you all know, this is the period when people are filing, as we all know, when you're filing for your taxes or for your refund. And one of the ways in which people who are working but who are making below a certain income level can put some money in their pocket is to file for the Earned Income Tax Credit. The Earned Income Tax Credit is a federal tax credit, and we have centers throughout Durham, several different ones, where people can go and get free help to file for their taxes. One that Mayor Pro Tem and the mayor spoke the other day, is at Shepherd House, which is the corner of Driver and Main Street, and there's free tax help, both in English and in Spanish, every other Wednesday night. And that is what's called a VITA site, and that's run by Reinvestment Partners. And they also have another one at Northgate Shopping Center, which operates many more times than that. There are others throughout the city that other great organizations are running as well. But please spread the word, because this is a way in which hardworking people are able to put a little extra money in their pocket, and or sometimes a substantial amount of extra money. So please spread the word. This tax help is free, and it's important that we in Durham are able to access it, as much of it as we can for the people that live here. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
So I do have something, but this is to thank the city manager again for rallying resources to help the students at Lakeview School. It has made a difference, and things are getting so much better. So I thank you, sir, for what you did to make that happen.
There are other announcements by any of the council members? If not, I recognize the city manager for priority items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good evening, everyone. Three priority items and then a follow-up comment. For the priority items this evening, agenda item number 4, the adoption of a resolution requesting a deed of partial release for certain premises related to an installment purchase contract with New Durham Corporation related matters. Request this item be deferred to the February 4th work session. Agenda item number 8, the proposed sale of the north parking garage by upset bid pursuant to NCGS 160A-269. Also request this item be deferred to the February 4th, 2016 work session. And then agenda item number 10, water-only utility extension agreement with C&D Associates South LLC to serve 8201 Farrington Mill Road. This item is being referred back to the administration and the Public Works Department. And did want to follow up just briefly on Councilmember Reese's comments about the Holton programming. Thank you very much for your comments, Councilmember Reese. We are very indeed pleased to put forth this proposal for the pilot program for the free services at the Holton Career and Resource Center. While for many years the Parks and Recreation Department has offered some free programming in all of its recreation centers, also has had a program fee waiver process in some situations. We do think this targeted pilot program at Holton is going to give us an excellent opportunity to see if participation levels can increase by offering majority of the Parks and Recreation services at no cost. And there is no definite time for the conclusion of the pilot, but we certainly are going to be monitoring it on a regular basis. And if it appears that we are seeing the uptick in attendance at the recreation center that we would hope that this pilot program promises, it is something that we certainly would be considering for other recreation centers in the future. So thank you to the mayor and council for your support. They obviously, nothing is free. Somebody is paying costs associated with it, but in this case, it just won't be paid for by the participants in almost all of those programs at the Holton Career and Resource Center. So I wanted to make that announcement, but thank you very much.
Thank you. You've heard the manager's priority items. Entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
I recognize the city attorney for any priority items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No priority items.
Likewise, city clerk.
No items, Mr. Mayor.
We'll move the agenda. First item being the consent agenda. Consent agenda items may be approved with a single vote if one is removed by any member of the council or the public. We'll discuss that later in the agenda. As normal, I'll just read the heading of each consent agenda item. Item 1 is approval of city council minutes. Item 2 is FY 2015-2016 Emergency Solutions Grant and City General Fund Housing for New Hope, Inc. Subrecipient Contract Rapid Rehousing Services. Item 3 is emergency telephone consoles at Durham Sheriff's Office. Item 4 has been referred back. Item 5 is contract for collection agent services. Item 6 is December 2015 bid report. Item 7 is state contract purchase replacement vehicles for the Durham Police Department. Item 8 is also referred back. Item 9 is FY 2015-2016 contract between the City of Durham and the Center for Documentary Studies. Item 10, let me pull item 9, please. Item 10 is water-only utility extension agreement with C&D Associates South LLC to serve 8201 Farrington Mill Road. That's items referred back also. Item 13 through 20 are items that can be found on the general business agenda of public hearings. And item 22 is an agreement with Research Triangle Foundation to support Delta Airlines Paris service. Entertain a motion on the consent agenda item. Second. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? You close the vote?
It passes 7-0.
We move to item, on the general business agenda for public hearings, item 13, street closings, Coventry Road, street closing 15-00006.
Good evening, Steve Medlin with the Durham City County Planning Department. I would like to first certify that all required public notice for all planning items this evening has been carried out in compliance with both the North Carolina General Statutes and the Unified Development Ordinance, and affidavits to this effect are part of the case files. Street closing case SC 15-6 is a request by Stacy Burkert to close an approximately 431 linear foot portion of Coventry Road, which is south of Dover Road. The right-of-way is publicly dedicated and unimproved at this point. The property is bordered by property owned by Ms. Burkert and Marion Russell Behringer. If the request is approved, the right-of-way is proposed to be recombined with Ms. Burkert's property. The adjacent area is zoned RS10 and is located in the suburban tier. No service impacts have been identified during the review of this application. Staff is recommending approval of this street closing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. This is a public hearing matter. Consider the public hearing to be open. First, ask whether there are questions by council or staff. If not, we have one person who signed up to speak, Ms. Stacy Burkert. If you go to the podium to the right, you have 3 minutes. And while she's coming, is there anyone else that wants to speak on this item, this being a public hearing? All right.
Thank you, Council. Stacy Burkert. I appreciate that staff is endorsing this proposal, and I just wanted to reiterate that for me personally, our piece of property is the only one that was completely landlocked, and we have to utilize this Coventry Road as our driveway because Third Fork Creek cuts all the way across the front of our property, even though we are Dover Road. With the recombination, we've taken out all the other lots that would have been on Coventry Road. It's a partial closing because of, at the other end is Hope Valley Road, and there's a driveway off of that, and they actually use Coventry Road as their address, so we cannot close their address and change their address. But this is really just for us to be able to take care and maintain the driveway as our own instead of getting approval from engineering every time. There's also a Duke Power line, main line there, and it's a heavily wooded area, and it also needs maintenance on a routine basis that we're starting to worry about some dead trees and things, and we don't have to get approval from the city to take care of that. If you have any questions for me also, I would be happy to take them.
Me first recognize Councilwoman Moffett. I don't know if you have a question for her or the staff. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. I was just curious, typically when we do a street closing, the property that is freed up is usually split between two adjacent, or all the adjacent landowners. I was wondering what was different about this one.
Statute does make provision that typically right-of-way is split equally among the adjacent property owners unless there is an agreement between the property owners for a different distribution, which is the case tonight.
Okay.
Is that your question?
Okay, that's fine. That's good. Thank you.
We don't have any further questions. Again, is anyone else that wants to speak on this item? This being a public hearing. If not, let the record reflect that no one else has to speak on this item. I'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Matters back before the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Move to item 14, historic properties, local review criteria, consolidation and update.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Miller with the City County Planning Department. Just to reintroduce you to this project, it is an undertaking that the Planning Department has taken in conjunction with the Historic Preservation Commission to make modifications to and consolidate the review criteria that are used for review of modifications to all of our historic properties that are locally designated, local landmarks and local districts. The basic changes are consolidating those into a single document, updating that language and differentiating between contributing and non-contributing structures. We're also trying to establish clearer criteria for how projects in the right-of-way are dealt with, include criteria for how cemeteries and archaeological sites are dealt with, separate criteria for how local landmarks are dealt with, and then the associated items 15 through 20, which we'll get to later, are updates to the preservation plans to reflect those things. I'd be happy to go into more detail or answer questions as necessary.
Again, this is a public hearing item. You've heard the staff comments. I would ask first, are there questions, comments by members of the council? Recognize Councilman Shule.
I have questions, but I think I'd rather wait until after the comments if there are any. Thank you.
Are there any other comments by members of the council? Let me ask, is anyone in the public who wants to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one in the public has to speak on this item. I'll bring it back before the council before I close the public hearing. Recognize Councilman Shule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Lisa. So this was a big document, and good job. I mean, I think that it really, if I was someone who was considering some kind of adaptive reuse or a renovation, or, I think that that would have clear guidance, which I think is really important. And I did feel like it was written very clearly, and so congratulations, because there's a lot of stuff in it, and I think you did it well. And of course, just having the ability to preserve these historic assets is what makes us unique. I heard Jeff Durham from Downtown Durham Inc. the other day say it's what keeps us from being a downtown in a box. And I thought that was a great metaphor. It is what gives us our uniqueness and our ability to do this and do this well. And I appreciated the language in here that you're trying to balance the benefits of preservation with considerations of economy and livability, because I know that balance is hard to strike, and I appreciate the ambition that the staff and the Historic Preservation Commission put into this to try to balance those things. The new structures. Could you talk a little bit about that? You have a discussion of it on page 48, but I wasn't really, so what's new about what we're doing about new structures?
So in addition to the overall way that structures are classified and called out in the document, as you know, we have contributing properties that are generally considered historic, non-contributing properties that are newer and not historic or not historic yet. The way that the page number you called out is dealing with the primarily residential districts rather than downtown. For those districts currently, the criteria have a couple of items where they talk specifically about big picture, new construction kind of items. They don't call out clearly whether the Secretary of the Interior standards apply or not, which is one of the things that we've done with this document, is to remove the reference to the Secretary of Interior standards and make sure to base both our landmark and contributing structure standards very tightly on the Secretary standards, but applied in a way that's very Durham specific. So the new structure standards takes the big picture items from the current documents, calls out that those just apply for new structures within the residential district, focuses on items like scale, height, massing, the things that really have the opportunity to detract from the overall character of the historic district. So we want to make sure that those things are protected in the big picture items. But then the criteria for new structures go into less prescriptive work for architectural style. You don't have to match the architectural styles of the district. You have more flexibility to build something that is a contemporary architecture, or that it can reflect, some of the parts and pieces from historic architecture as well.
So how would that, when I think about the controversy over in Oakwood in Raleigh this year, or last year, where there was a new structure and there was a lot of controversy about whether or not that should be allowed in a historic district. I wonder how these new criteria would speak to that? How would that be evaluated under these new criteria?
Sure. From my recollection of that particular structure, and then also just kind of speaking in general, to take a modern structure that is, that structure was placed similarly on the lot to other properties in Oakwood. The scale of it, the height of it was similar. The architectural style what was contemporary about it. The pattern of windows, the roof line, things like that, which do have a significant impact on the style of a structure. But one of the things that you'll notice as you go through many of our historic districts, and Moorhead Hill is a great example, there's a very large variety of architectural styles within that district. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who says that that is a detriment to the district. So allowing people to create their own architectural expression, but still maintaining, like I said, those kind of big picture design questions, keeping those in line with the sort of historic development pattern.
Thank you. That was a good explanation. Could you talk about the main differences between the criteria for the residential and the residential districts versus the downtown district?
I can try. They are very different, and they're different currently. So one of the things that we looked at, our starting point for revising the criteria was taking all of them for our 7 different districts and looking at what we had in place, what were the issues, what were the commonalities between the different districts, because we knew we were trying to consolidate into a single document. The downtown criteria were laid out in either you're creating infill or new sort of big block development, or you're doing renovation. And that sort of structure is one that we didn't, it left a lot of holes in terms of projects where we didn't feel like the criteria particularly addressed adequately. To contrast, the residential districts, almost all of them have almost identical language. There are very minor points where there's differences, which ended up causing confusion actually for both folks on the commission and for applicants who were applying to multiple, for approvals in multiple districts. So the residential criteria are more, they're a little bit more stringent in that you have a more consistent context to begin with. In downtown, you have a widely varied context, and we think that that's one of the things that really makes that a rich district. And so recognizing that and allowing for that diversity is something that we wanted to make sure could continue to happen in downtown. Whereas in our residential districts, we do have a lot more similarities with particularly with those sort of big picture items, but then even within some of the architectural style elements. So the downtown criteria are much more flexible in terms of what they allow, and that's also in part kind of trying to keep in mind that Durham is redeveloping and there are these big projects that happen. How can we balance making sure that we're sensitively rehabilitating and infill building with our historic district, but making sure that we can allow that development to happen?
Thank you. You know, we had some discussion, and we've been having some discussion about the Fayetteville Street corridor, which includes the Fayetteville Street Historic District. And there's a lot of concern in the community and members of the council that corridor be improved and the gateway to North Carolina Central be everything that we all want it to be. And I wondered how you thought that the criteria and the historic district itself would speak to that. You know, what difficulties might it create? There are people who own buildings in the district, and you speak to this at some point about the not just in that district but in others, about how people of limited economic means and how they will be dealt with in a process like this. So I just wondered if you could speak to the Fayetteville Street Historic District in particular and how it might affect the rehabilitation of the corridor.
Sure. I think that in being an important gateway to Central, that establishing the historic district and trying to preserve the character and the history of what has been built there, I think is very much in line with that. I think that having standards in place that as people try and make modifications to their property, that they're done in a sensitive manner is also important. But you're right, it does create, it can create economic hardship for folks. And I think that's one of the things that is identified in the Fayetteville Street Preservation Plan, among other preservation plans, as an important recognition and a potential policy direction to try and figure out ways around that. That I don't think that we've necessarily done well. We've done a lot of trying to coordinate with community development and neighborhood improvement services to identify whether there are resources available to folks that we can direct them towards, and then sort of helping people work through when there are code issues and things like that, trying to streamline the approval process as much as possible by working with NIS. That's been the extent of what we've been able to sort of accomplish on that front, but certainly recognize that it's an area of concern. We're open to ways to better address that, absolutely.
Thank you. I mean, I think we all need to give that some thoughtful consideration, not just you all, but all of us, because I do think that those can be competing objectives, and we need to, they're both important, but we need to figure it out. In the demolition by neglect, if fines are levied and they do no good, in other words, the neglect is not remedied, what are the steps that ensue?
I don't have my ordinance in front of me. So we have a process where we levy fines. Okay. So
He doesn't always say the right thing, Lisa.
If you are found to be in a condition of demolition by neglect and you do not remedy it, then it is a court matter.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's something that you all pursue, or does that pursued by NIS? How does that work? And how does it relate to
I'm gonna let
this?
Steve answer that.
Steve Medlin with the Planning Department. To be honest with you, council member, we've never actually carried it to the extent of judicial hearing. Typically what we found is that whenever we have investigated for demolition by neglect, in those cases where demolition is potentially present, the property owner typically will try to work with NIS and the department staff to remedy that situation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then, this is a very complete document. You've got an appendix on the new granite curb procedures.
Yes.
Thank you to the Public Works Department. You talked about the first thing that you would look at there is whether or not the curb is within the Historic Preservation District, and then these would kick in.
Yes.
I'm assuming there's granite curbs all over the city that are outside that. Is this process also to be followed similarly outside that, or?
Not to my knowledge. We had some extensive conversations with the folks in Public Works to talk through, as it came up related to a couple of particular cases. And essentially, we were trying to find common ground where we recognize the difficulties that come with trying to preserve that granite curb, and that sometimes it's not possible, or it is possible but with great expense. And they recognize that if it is possible without great additional expense, then that's what we want to be prioritizing. And this was sort of in our historic districts, the right-of-way is part of the district. The city's responsibility for things within the right-of-way is part of the contribution to the overall character. This was a place where we came to this sort of resolution regarding a process for retaining those as much as possible. If I'm sure they would take direction from the city council if there was a desire to do this elsewhere. They've got a process in place, but it's just established for historic districts now.
Thank you. My last question is regarding sustainability, which you mentioned in the memo, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a specific reference. So I assume what that meant was people who are making alterations to a historic structure to to make it a more sustainable structure, there is some consideration of that given? Does that mean, for example, solar panels? I mean, what does that mean?
So you won't find any criteria that specifically address sustainability. Essentially, it was one of the considerations that we brought to the table as we were reviewing the criteria and as we were modifying them, and as we were trying to determine what amount of flexibility and where the most important aspects of a given structure were to preserve as, in the closer to their original form. So some of the language in the criteria about how things like solar panels can be placed has been modified. It used to be it had to be on the rear roof. Now there's language about minimizing visibility to the greatest extent possible. We did look at certainly orientation of a new structure has an impact on the ability to collect solar. That was a direction that we felt like was beyond what was appropriate for the historic district, that there were aspects of the orientation and placement of structures that was important enough to continue in the development of the historic district to keep with that character, so that was something that we backed off of.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate it. I think it's a lot of really good work, and I do think that it's so hard to strike the balance, and I hope that you and the commission members themselves will continue to try to think about the balance we do need to strike on issues of sustainability, new structures and their design, where we want really great new architecture, even in his old historic districts. The fact that some people are going to have an economic difficulty fixing up their structures that we might want fixed up, and these other issues of balance. But I thought you did a really good job of addressing that in here, and so I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Let me ask, just a minute. Let me ask other comments from council members on this item. I have another point I want to make on this item. Other comments? I recognize the Mayor Pro Tem.
Brought up the Fayetteville Street Preservation Plan. There's a separate item, but there's somebody who needs to speak on it. So since it's been brought up, could they speak now so they can go?
Let me do it this way, because this is a public hearing matter.
Yes, sir.
And that is a separate item. We need to deal with this one first. So are there other comments relative to this item? Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this item? If not, let the record reflect no one else has to speak on this particular item. I declare the public hearing to be closed. Matters back before the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? You close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Going back to the Mayor Pro Tem's point, I was going to speak to that. Let me ask, are there persons here that are here to speak on the Downtown Durham Preservation Plan update? Is there anyone here to speak on the Cleveland Street and Holloway Street Preservation Plan update?
Can I interrupt for just a moment?
Sure.
We also have a consistency statement as part.
I'm going to deal with that too.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I'm trying to find, is anybody else who wants to speak to any of these other items? Okay, entertain a motion on the consistency statement.
So moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? You close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
So let's move item 17, which is the Fayetteville Street Preservation Plan update next, and then we'll get back in order with the Cleveland Street and downtown Durham.
Just as a brief introduction, each one of these preservation plans, we have 6 of them, has been slightly modified from its previously adopted state to take out the previous set of review criteria that were being used and to reference this new document that's you all just adopted. There's been other minor revisions to the text itself to try and update where there are out-of-date references or buildings that had been demolished, things like that. And we also went through and did a review of each of the structures in the district to determine whether it seemed appropriate to change the contributing or non-contributing status of that structure. Overall, in all 7 districts, there were, I believe, 18 changes to that. So if you have any particular questions about that, I can answer them.
Are there comments by members of the council on this item? If not, I'd like to recognize Dr. Deborah Sanders White, Chancellor NCCU, for comments. You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak before you. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said, but I think it's important that I exercise this opportunity and this voice before you to talk about North Carolina Central University. As we look to grow and expand our footprint within our community, it is important that the redevelopment of Fayetteville Street occurs. We are in favor of the staff recommendations to the council to update the plan, allowing a change in criteria. Wanting an inviting gateway to our historic university, and if I can borrow from the Fayetteville Preservation Plan of August 2000, the words, one that preserves the integrity and cultural significance of Durham's historical assets are important to the survival and the growth of our institution. Approval of this plan will allow greater latitude for property owners, compliance for property upgrades, which will ultimately beautify the corridor and be attractive to our prospective students and their families, thus fostering growth for North Carolina Central University. Further, we encourage the city to invest in the necessary streetscapes and landscapes necessary to highlight this corridor. Our research indicates that a city's investment in this corridor will significantly impact our growth, as the #1 reason why students do not select North Carolina Central University is environment. And when we tease that data back, we determine that that environment, that approach to our campus contributes to the overall environment. Now, I'm excited about the prospects of changing Fayetteville Street. As you know, the university is very much tied to this improvement. We have reallocated our own resources to help in this improvement, and we look forward to a stronger partnership with the city. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Let me recognize Norman Glenn for comments, and you have 3 minutes on this item.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and others, good evening. Like the young lady that just spoke, some of my concerns has already been addressed, but more broadly, so I'm going to be a little bit more detailed with my concerns. My name is Norman Glenn. I'm here to represent my brother-in-law, General Williams, and my sister, Mary Williams, that owns property at 1603 Fayetteville Street. They had very much wanted to attend the meeting tonight, but they live in Germantown, Maryland, and of course General Williams is in frail health at the moment, and he was not able to make the trip. So they asked me to come and receive comments and speak on their behalf. My specific concerns is that it seems that the progress of the renovation in the Fayetteville Street Historic District is very slow. There are houses that's been vacant, partially boarded up, under construction for years. One of my questions are the same code violations time framed in effect for houses that's outside of the historic district as opposed to houses within the district? Because my opinion is that if there are some of the violations outside of the historic district, they would be required to bring those units up to code much faster than the houses that's in the Fayetteville Street corridor. My brother-in-law and sister have been very diligent in making sure that their property, which was built some 80 years ago, conforms to all of the codes, all of the guidelines and is kept up in very good condition. But then you have property right next door to it that's, just far from being maintained. There's no effort to maintain it. And you can go in that 5-block area from the library down to Lawson Street, and there's a number of houses that's in dire need of repair. So my question is the same urgency in that area to make sure houses are brought up to code as houses in areas that's not part of the historic district? Is there a time frame given to bring these houses up to a certain standard that's in that area?
Mr.
And I
Grant,
do have some other questions that I would.
I'm going to allow you some more time, but what I wanted to say is, if you have written remarks, you could also leave them with the staff before we leave, so we can make sure to address them. We'll try to get a response to some of your questions. Same thing for you, Madam Chancellor. If you'd like to leave your written remarks, we'd appreciate it. Can you add 2 more minutes to his remarks?
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
There's been some speak of, there are 6 items, 6 updated items that involves this historic district. I would like a copy of those updated items and what's being updated. Another concern, there was an article in the Durham Morning Herald on January the 22nd that spoke to NCCU and the state interested in purchasing property in the surrounding area. That being the case, and I don't know who would elaborate on that, does that mean that the state and North Carolina Central may possibly be interested in purchasing property that's in the Fayetteville Street Historic District? And if so, how is that going to affect the property owners in that district? So those are just a couple of concerns. But the major concern is there does not seem to be any urgency in requiring property owners to go in and bring those properties up to a standard that would enhance the corridor to NCCU and also the Fayetteville Street Preservation area as a whole.
All right, thank you, Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Manager, can you have someone respond to his question? The point about since NCCU and state, you need to talk to the chancellor on that one. But,
Mr. Glenn?
Mr. Glenn.
I'd have to defer to staff. I don't think there's any distinction as it relates to historic properties in terms of the code enforcement sequence.
That's correct.
And coincidentally, the staff did provide a report to the council just at the last work session on the status of code enforcement activities in and around the Fayetteville Street corridor and NCCU. And if we could get your contact information, I'd be glad to share that with you. It has all the details, and it will answer many of the questions that you've raised. Council over the last several months has raised that as a matter of importance, and that's why the staff presented a report on the activities that we have been working on, not completed, but continue to work on. And I do believe that some of the changes that are proposed in the Fayetteville Street Preservation Plan may well help support some of the improvement along that corridor as well in terms of the remodeling or the changes to some of the properties.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I'll be glad to get it to you.
Who would you suggest I give my contact information to?
If you just meet the gentleman in the back of the room, Keith Chadwell, he'll be glad to get it for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me ask, are there other comments? Anyone else in the public that wants to speak on this item? Again, this is a public hearing matter. Let the record reflect that no one else in the public asked to speak on this item. I'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Matters back before the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move back to consistency on that one, yeah? Did you move that? It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
All right, let's move back to item 15, Cleveland Street and Holloway Street Preservation Plan update.
The proposal here is very similar to what I described for the Fayetteville Street District. However, because there is a request in that we are, as soon as we complete this project, going to be assessing to expand the Holloway Street Local Historic District, we didn't do extensive modifications to the preservation plan itself, just reviewed the significance of non-contributing or contributing structures, and referenced the new criteria, removed the old criteria.
Again, this is a public hearing. The public hearing is open. Would ask first, are there questions, comments by members of the council? Recognize, oh, you waving. Okay. Okay, that's good. That's okay. Is there anyone in the public that wants to speak on this item? Again, let the record reflect that no one in the public wants to speak on this item. I'll declare the public meeting closed. Matters back before council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? You close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? And close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Move to item 16, Downtown Durham Preservation Plan update.
This is a similar proposal, slight difference in that because we recently updated this preservation plan back in 2011, we did not review all of the contributing, non-contributing classifications because we felt they were already as they needed to be, and so there are not any changes to this plan except for modifying the criteria that are relevant.
This is a public hearing. The public hearing is open. You've heard the staff report. Are there questions by members of the council? Is there anyone in the public that wants to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one in the public asked to speak on this item. I will declare the public hearing to be closed. Matters back before the council. Second. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
You open the vote. Is there a second to the movement? It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote?
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. Move to item 18, Moorhead Hill Preservation.
The modifications to this document are generally in keeping with those I described for the Fayetteville Street District. One of the things to note in this is that we found some time ago a discrepancy between the list of properties in the district and the map itself. We determined that because it's a zoning overlay, the map is what was the binding instrument, so therefore we added into the list the properties that were not listed originally. We specifically notified those property owners to make sure that they understood this change and that it was not actually a change in their zoning, but clarifying the document that was incorrect at the time of its adoption.
Again, this is a public hearing. The public hearing is open. You've heard the staff report. Are there questions, comments by members of the council? Anyone in the public that wants to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If you come to the podium and state your name and address. I don't know, did you fill out a card? I didn't see.
No, I didn't.
Okay. After you speak, could you?
I will.
Thank you.
Blaine Butterworth, 1109 Vickers Avenue. I'm a resident of the Moorhead Hill Historic District. Great job on the plan. I had some opportunity to provide some input and some of the wording, but it looks good and it sounds good. There's two issues that I have with, in general, the historic plans, if you will, is especially the non-contributing, but more along with general maintenance, like replacing a roof or painting the outside is not a problem, but replacing a roof, we're encouraged to get similar or the same materials. And some of those roofs, I have a roof that's a tin roof. I'm not going to get a tin roof now. It drives you into the COA and a lot of discussion. But as I heard the discussion on Fayetteville, on Fayetteville Street, I'd be very concerned about, there's encouragement in the plans for people to keep their property up. But if you're really looking for Fayetteville Street to look different, it just keeping the properties up, it isn't gonna make the house, I mean, it won't look, the homes look a lot different. They'll just look like they were preserved from whatever time frame they were built. And it seems to me that the district plans can inhibit changing the look or the big picture of a property. And certainly, I would agree that the entrance, the corridor into North Carolina Central needs to be improved. But I just don't think within a historic plan there's much latitude, much encouragement. In our district, we had 2 homes, one of which probably could be repaired, the other was beyond repair. We had to wait for a year. In fact, people in the neighborhood were hoping that homes could be saved, but we had to wait a whole year before they were torn down. So now we've got an empty lot. And it's, it's that condition. If they can't be restored and the homeowner says, I don't have the money, it's a big deal, I've got things that are, 4 or 5 things that are just major things, it's too expensive to try to bring that home back from the 1930s or 1950s to a current state. So even with that being a challenge and trying to go further and make it look really, really neat, like some of the historic districts in the country, they have beginning building blocks from the 50s or the 30s, but they kind of look a lot better than they did in those times. There's not much encouragement, I don't think, in any of these plans to do that. Those are my few comments.
I think, appreciate your comments, but let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
What do you think should be in there to provide the type of encouragement you're speaking about?
Well, I think it would have to be latitude, similar to the ability in the new construction. There's a lot more latitude in new construction. We have a project that's going in, it's going to look totally different than the huge home right next to it. It's going to be 3 stories and it's going to be more modern looking. It'll have some things that look historic. That's not the intent of new construction, to try and make things look, like the rest of the houses. So it'll look a lot better, but if you don't start from scratch, I think you got a real challenge. And so relaxing it, this district may have to have some relaxation in the requirements to enable something to look different. But the street has to be widened, I would think, would be one thing, and that would be a city issue. The homes, I think, need to be, cleaned up, and I'm not a contractor, but you could do a lot with homes if you have the ability to go outside the guidelines. And Lisa may have comments on that, I would hope.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Did you initially say that you were talking about having that flexibility with non-contributing structures or across the board?
Well, specifically in that one historic district in near Central, that's where I think it needs to be done there. Fayetteville, yeah.
Got it. Well, what I can say is that we go into this knowing there's something that we're trying to preserve. There's a historic character in these districts that's been recognized by the city and by the residents in those homes and by others in the community, that there's something worth preserving there, not just in terms of the experience that you have being in those districts and the homes themselves, but also the history that ties us to in terms of our lengthy Durham history. So one of the things that we really looked at as we were going through this process, because we heard a lot of folks who wanted to have very few or no restrictions on properties within local districts. We heard some folks who wanted very, very strict requirements for district properties. And again, we tried to find a balance. We wanted to make sure that we were able to hold on to the historic character that really made these worth designating and keep them tied to that sort of history and that historic development pattern, and but also to where we can allow as much flexibility as possible. And so we have this approach that has come out of that desire and those conversations, both with staff, with community members, with applicants, with the Historic Preservation Commission, in order to try and find a good balance to move forward with. And if we have missed the mark on that, then I would love to hear it, and there's possibility for modification.
Well, I suspect that once this plan is finalized and approved and people try to execute, then you start getting some of the questions raised as to whether you
Sure.
need more latitude or not. So we're accepted with that and appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
It may take a special project, if you will, within city government planning as well as central to come up with what that street ought to look like, and then see if that can be done within the restrictions, and then if not, find a way to bypass those restrictions. That would be my thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were you going to say something? Were you?
I was just trying to determine, which item was he speaking on? I heard him talk about Fayetteville Street.
Well, he just,
It's general. Okay.
no, he was speaking specifically Moorhead,
About
but he's,
Moorhead.
yeah,
Okay, all right.
but he referenced Fayetteville Street. Let me ask, any other persons that want to speak on this item? If not, again, let the record reflect no one else has to speak. I will declare the public hearing to be closed. Madam Speaker for the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Vote. Close the vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, my light's not going right. Let's move to item 19, Trinity Heights Preservation Plan update.
Again, the Trinity Heights Preservation Plan has a similar set of revisions as I described for the Fayetteville Street area. I'm happy to answer any questions on what that entails.
Again, this is a public hearing. The public hearing is open. Would ask, are there questions by the council or the staff? Anyone in the audience that wants to speak, this being a public hearing? Let the record reflect that no one in the public asked to speak. I will declare the public hearing to be closed. Madam Speaker for the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
It's been properly moved and second. Will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. Move to item 20, Watts Hillendale Preservation Plan update.
Again, the changes in this revised document are similar to those proposed for and adopted in the new Fayetteville Street District Plan.
Okay, this is a public hearing. You've heard the staff report. Comments by council? Hearing none. Anyone in the public wants to speak on this item? Let the record. Are you raising your hand? Oh, okay. Let the record reflect that no one has to speak. I'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Madam Speaker for the council. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Move the consistency statement.
It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Okay. We had one item that was pulled, item 9, approval of grant for Full Fame Festival, Greg Britz.
Evening.
You have 3 minutes. Yes.
Was there a question? I'm sorry.
You pulled the item. Didn't you pull item 9?
Oh, no, I just signed in because in case I needed to speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was told to sign in when I came in
Oh,
case
okay,
someone had
okay,
a question.
okay.
Move the item, Mr. Mayor.
It's
I
been properly,
apologize.
it's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Open the vote. And close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
At least he got to enjoy a nice meeting at Durham City Council, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Any other items coming before the council? If not, meeting's adjourned at 8:04 p.m. Thank you.